Hi there, this is Dr. Barbara Young. Welcome to the Total Woman Show, Transformation Success Television. You know what? I want to thank all my guests, all of you who are there in the audience. Thank you for coming to the studio today. We really appreciate you being here. So let's give you a big hand clap. Yay! So today, we are here for part 2 with Dr. Carol Provo, who's our spotlight guest, and she has a return visit with us today. And I'm introducing my new co-host today, Kim Yeater. Yes, let's give it a shout out for Kim. Kim is a coach. She actually coaches people on body motion, and she's a writer, she's an author, she's a speaker. I mean, she's just great. I met this woman and I said, I want you on my show. And she's on the show and she's just marvelous. But you do a lot of training for bodies in motion. I like that.
I do. So I'm a peak performance transformation coach. So I work with mind, body, and soul. So I do a lot of coaching for personal wellness and professional wellness, and I help transform the body at the
You
same
got that?
time.
You see why I have her on?
You got that?
Okay, because she's got it all, and she's telling it all. Okay.
Come on now.
And we got Dr. Carol Provo, who for many, many years has been a professor at Cal State Dominguez Hills teaching applied statistics, and she's my baby, and I just love her. And she has written a book on the narcissistic parent. And so today we're going to explore part 2 about narcissism. And as we're finding more and more within our communities and the world at large, more and more people are suffering from this disorder. There's a difference between narcissism, being a sociopath, and a psychopath. And I want to make those distinctions very clear in terms of the definitions. They are personality disorders. I'm not saying they're in your DNA, but I'll tell you today, you're going to hear some of the research that she's conducted. And one of the things I want to thank you for being on the show today, Carol, for part 2, because not only are you a noted psychologist and you a clinical psychologist, you've done a lot of work with narcissistic children and parents, but your book is based on research. It's not based on a theory or something you're coming up with, but it's based on what you've learned from actually interviewing clients who have had narcissistic parents. I don't want to ever use the word victim because I want to think of them as victors, although sometimes they never really overcome this, that I understand, because the thing goes so deep when you're dealing with a parent or someone, an uncle or not. But share with us a little bit of your book, and it's going to be coming out, and some of the things that you want to share further about the narcissistic parent.
Well, the first thing, like you said, you don't like to use the word victim, and the reason why I think that word is so important to say victim is because there's no defense to that particular personality, especially as a child. And so even though I'm dealing with the adult child, there's still very much that unhealed child within the adult. And they have been a victim. And I say that because we never want to gloss over the detriment that and what has been caused inside of them. So it's not that they are a victim now and they're walking around a victim, but they have been a victim of a perpetrator. And I want to make that clear that that parent or that mother or that father is a perpetrator, and they know exactly what they're doing. And that's why I'm so careful with those words, because I want them to know it is not your fault and there was nothing you can do, especially as a child. And so it's not that they are hopeless now as a victim, but they were a victim of a perpetrator. And when we soften the responsibility of that parent, we set ourselves up for more abuse. And so that's what I'm trying to get the audience to see. You have been violated. But what we do is we take that as a I'm a little bit at odds with the word mental illness, because as soon as we say mental illness, people like us have the empathy and we want to help. With that particular personality disorder, you can't want to help because they're going to use that as a weapon against you.
Well, one of the things that I do know is that what they say about them is that you want to be away from them as much as possible.
You're right.
Because there really is no cure in the fact that they do not have empathy. So if you think that you're going to play on that and somehow dissuade them to be somebody different or to treat you differently, that does not occur. So share a little bit more about what you want or what you're doing with the book and what you want people to know about it.
The book of course, as I told you, is my passion. And what I feel like is I'm pulling back the curtain. Finally, we're going to pull back the curtain on what is hidden in plain sight. Because you don't see them out and about. They're the perfect family. They're the perfect employee. They're the perfect friend. They're where their crimes take place is behind closed doors. And what is necessary for their power to exist is secrecy and that behind closed doors. So my goal is to pull back the curtain so that we can become aware of them, because they thrive in the fact that we don't know them. They thrive in the fact that they're getting away with it. And so if we can pull back that curtain, then people can say, oh my God, that's what's been happening to me. Oh my goodness, that's what it is. And that's the response I've been getting since part one.
Wow.
I didn't know what to call it. I didn't know what was happening to me. That happened to me. And then when you find something that you can label, then you feel like you can heal it.
So how do you pull back the curtain?
Well, in the book, I'm pulling back the characteristics, the faces she wears, what you might see in her victim children, because they are victims of her.
You're making it female because it could be male, Carol.
It could be male, it could be friend, it could be spouse,
But you're
it
saying
could be
she,
boy.
so I want-
Because that's the book,
Yeah.
You can apply this to any relationship. And then the beauty of the book, and the book is real detailed, and I'm talking to the lay person as well as the professional. What then goes on to highlight it is there's a therapeutic case at the end of each chapter. So then I show you in real world how this particular characteristic of this narcissistic person plays out in public. See, right now, she or he knows that you don't see. But if we could pull it back, then you're more informed in your relationship.
So making people aware that there is something called narcissism, that there's a possibility that the things they're going through, like they're in the confusion of, oh my gosh, am I like messed up? What's wrong with me? That there could be a possibility that you're in a relationship
with a narcissist.
So what would be my first step? Like the awareness, so reading your book is going to support me.
Yes. The one thing about this type of relationship, if it's happened to you, you'll never forget it. You probably just didn't know what to call it. And so you're going to know right away. If you read something, you're going to know right away. Because one of the hallmarks of this type of relationship is you think something's wrong with you.
Right. Yes.
And so you're dying by installments because you can't fix yourself. And you keep getting, as soon as you make some ground, you're knocked down again.
So this starts really early on in childhood with a narcissistic parent. It starts very early in the early stages of that child's growth and development. So by the time he or she is a teenager, they're so locked into the pattern that they become, using your word, victim and stay there. What is the answer for how they get out of that mentality? Because it's a mindset. They've been so...
And most of the time, I can say that the person isn't seeing me till late 30s to 40s, maybe even 50s.
Really? Okay.
Because,
so this isn't something that you discover at 17 or 18?
No, because your parents are your world. And so you don't go around speaking negatively. You adapt to their world most of the time. And so you haven't really seen anything else. So you don't know that maybe there's another kind of parent. And you've adapted. It's when your world starts to fall apart again. It's when your world starts to fall apart, or you just can never please her. It's just not getting any better. It's just not getting any better. And you're dying and she's thriving.
You know, the thought came to me that this could occur to foster children. Children that it's not the natural parent, but they are in the house of a foster parent who is a narcissistic person. That just came to me.
Yeah, it could be anybody.
I mean, because it could be not just your natural parent, but you're in a foster situation. I mean,
another situation we see it in too. Your parents might be fine. It could be your first boyfriend. It could be your first girlfriend. It could be your spouse. It could be your sister. It could be your best friend. But it's a relationship dynamic that's unforgettable because it does so much damage.
Yeah.
You know.
So how is that connected with, like, because what I'm hearing is this is, when you say perpetrator, I'm thinking of domestic violence. Like, there is a characteristic of a perpetrator, right? And so is there a possibility that these perpetrators, I know 1% of them change, right? For perpetrators of domestic violence, but is there a correlation? I mean, do you think some of them are real narcissists?
Some could be,
Yeah.
But a narcissist is not always, every domestic violence person may not be a narcissist, but every narcissist is detrimental and they come to bring harm. So that harm may not be physical. It could be mental, it could be verbal, it could be, and then physical also.
The question is what we sometimes posed in leadership. Are they born or are they made?
That's a great question.
Well, given what the Book of Disorder says, it's a personality disorder. And so personality something is warped within, but then the environment does play a part in either enhancing that or deleting that. So, but personality is who you are. It's how you move through the world, and it's how you handle your relationships. So all of that is, and it's very complicated. I don't think any of us can really explain why each person is born with a certain personality. But the other thing I wanted to kind of switch to is, how does she keep her environment? How does she thrive? Why is she able, or he able to exist without punishment, without awareness?
Detection.
Right. And it's because of that secrecy. And the family must buy into her plan. And that's why what you said, it starts early. You start punishing that child. So let's say you have the perfect family in the community and you go out and say something bad. What takes place behind closed doors will make sure that you never transgress again. Now, the public won't know. And you will come back and retell that story and go, oops, I made a mistake. No, my mother's lovely. Because the punishment will take place. If everyone in the household doesn't buy in, there's a punishment, a severe punishment. And so they learn before they ever step out what the story is.
You can't speak out.
And you cannot go against her.
Yeah.
And that's why we don't see her or him, because they're not out in public acting out. They're acting out inside behind closed doors. That secrecy is one of the things that is very necessary.
One of the classic cases, we talked about this last week, was the people with 13 children and how they were locked up and kept. And you think, how could parents treat children like that? You know, chained to beds and marching at 3 o'clock in the morning up and down for their exercise. But nevertheless, what have you learned, my question is, from the first show when we brought this out and started talking about narcissism and narcissistic parents? What has been the reaction?
Well, I've gotten a lot of reaction. Oh my goodness, that happened to me. Oh my goodness, I didn't know what to call it. Oh my goodness, I didn't know that was a thing. You know, that's what happened to me. And so people, even though they escape sometimes, they can go back and go, okay, what can I learn? What can I do? What can I do that doesn't happen again? And the one thing I wanted to point out to the audience, that I kind of felt like we kind of left it open, you know, last time. A lot of people know instinctively how dangerous it is. So, and I didn't want to leave the audience with just say no, or just, you know, don't participate. We instinctively know how dangerous your narcissistic relationship is. Sometimes you do have to get along until you can get out. So I don't want to leave the audience thinking you're just going to start standing up one day.
Yeah.
You know, you have to work your way out.
It sounds just like domestic violence. Like once they realize what they're in, that this is not going to change, and this really isn't about me, it's like the women begin to plan their leave strategically. It's like like survival.
Okay, and that's if it's a spouse relationship.
Yeah.
But a child relationship, you're still going to dinner every Sunday.
Right. What do you do?
How do you break from a parent you feel that it's wrong to break from? And that's what takes so long. You really have to work through that. Because a lot of kids, and I call them adult children, do not want to be separated from their families. Right. It's a very hard call. And so I've had many people terminate therapy. I've had many people, stop because they just can't bear to think that something's wrong with her or him.
Yeah.
That's still their lifeline in their adulthood,
Now, it is different with a relationship as opposed to mother. It's different if it's a marital partner or spouse, that kind of abusive kind of situation that goes on, the controlling. I did meet someone yesterday who I talked about having this subject today, this conversation, and she said, I was in that kind of relationship with a narcissistic man, but I broke away from it. I think very controlling behavior. They're never wrong, they're always right, they're the expert, and if anything ever happens, you're the one.
Yes, and I'd like to add to that, they don't feel guilt, they don't feel regret, and they don't apologize. And so you're always trapped in accepting you're wrong. If you don't, there's a severe punishment for not, and that takes us to the weapons that are used against you, whatever kind of relationship that might be. And one of the weapons that they use is your desire to want to get along. That in itself becomes a weakness, and then they resent you for that weakness. So if you at all want to get along, and it goes for the therapist too. I've had a narcissist in therapy, and they're trying to push me, and I'm pushing back, but then they're going to terminate.
Wow.
And so that desire, and what I'd like to say it like this: any form of goodness that you may have toward them becomes a weapon that they use against you. And so if you're not as evil as they are, it's hard to move, because what else? I love you. What else should I do with you? I don't know what to do except for want to solve this with you.
So how do you empower these women or these men, for example? How do you empower them to say no?
It's difficult. I've had someone in therapy with me for 3 years, and just getting to the point where you can say that this happened to me may take a year. It could take 6 months. But then when you begin to realize, and when I can get them to see it's not you, then it's different for a maternal and a paternal relationship, because it's very hard as humans for us to see anything negative about our parents. And so if I can get them to see, and then they can become an active participant in their own healing, then I can empower them with objectives, because it's pulling you out of the emotion. Those relationships are very emotional.
Yeah.
And so pulling you out of that emotion to see it as objective and strategic is what the book does too. It discusses that.
So who's going to buy this book, Carol? Are we going to have lay people that will want to buy the book? Or are you going to have therapists?
Yes. I give a list in the book. The book is for anyone who wants to read it, of course. But in particular, the adult victim, maybe the teenager. I wouldn't even want the teenager to read this unless they were working through the book with a therapist. Definitely all psychology and psychiatric programs, definitely sociology programs, because I want to pull that curtain back. If we all know the signs, if we all can identify what we see, I liken it into that powerful voice from The Wizard of Oz. And you think he's powerful, but when you pull back the curtain, he was a midget.
Yeah. There's a sad part of this. The sad part is that there doesn't seem to be a cure for the narcissistic person. Like, I don't hear any answers for cures. What?
And there are not any cures for most of the personality disorder, and not cures, so to speak.
Well, that people get healed.
Management.
That they, they get managed. And when you think of the sociopath, remember I first talked about this, is absolutely, these are serial killers who do all this demonstrative, demonstrative.
And most of them have
destructive.
narcissistic features.
Yeah, they do.
Because they are in that
they do.
same
They're
cluster
in that same
of
personality
disorders.
cluster.
Right.
Yeah.
The sociopath and the psychopath tend to be more dangerous. But you have a dangerous narcissist too.
Yes, you do.
And that's all the way on the extreme of that spectrum, which I think it's Kernberg calls that the malignant narcissist. They can be just as, but all of them share characteristics.
They do.
And so.
But you need to know the distinction so that you don't mislabel somebody and call them a sociopath and really a narcissistic parent.
And the layperson doesn't really have to do that diagnostic work, but the professional knows the difference. But getting to a professional is really important, and that's the last chapter in my book. How do I find the help that I need?
I think that's the important part, and that's why I have part 2 is that so now you hear Dr. Provo, she's talking about the narcissistic parent. She's explained the behavior of the person who is being perpetrated upon. But the answer is finding solutions, because that's what this program really is all about. We look at the issues, the challenges, but we talk about how do we solve this. So there is help, and you can find help. But it's, first of all, I have to acknowledge that I need help and that you want help. Because if you don't want it and really sincerely make a commitment to get help, then you'll still be trapped in this situation with a parent or a spouse. It's interesting that you don't recognize them so much in business as employers or CEOs. They go undetected.
Because their characteristics
about success, being successful, being in charge, managing people,
cunning people, winning, being assertive, being aggressive. I win, you lose is business. And so you miss it there because it really doesn't cause any harm. We know that for somebody to win, someone has to lose. And so we can kind of hide it in that shadow. That can be kind of shadowed over. But in the home, it doesn't work that same way.
I wonder if the characteristics with the female are a little bit different than in the male, because they're, two different species, if you look male and female. I wonder if the characteristics, have you found anything to that effect?
Well, I think they both have detrimental consequences. We usually don't call men narcissists as much. We do, but they're going to be more violent. We're going to say they're abusers. We're going to say we won't give them the fancy name all the time. They both can be violent, men and women. They will probably do it a little differently. Women, I think, well, they're about equal because they all will be verbally abusive, emotionally, mentally, and then that it's just who they choose. It's who they they are panning the environment at all times. So there's no cookie cutter for what they will do. They have to see the weakness in you and take advantage. So it will always be geared toward how the environment suits them, And so finding that therapist, though, is really important. I guess we're going to talk about that in the next segment, because I really have some important things to say about finding the right help. Not all psychologists are perfect. Not all psychologists know everything. And so there are some ways to determine who is the best fit for you. And I'll talk about that in the next segment.
Excellent.
Okay. That's excellent. Because I think so many people need to know about this, and I really, was anxious to have you back because we had such an outpouring of people who really wanted to know about, narcissism. And I know in certain cultures we don't really talk about narcissism. We don't use that term. My mom's crazy, or my dad, strange. But we don't use the labels that now are defining these characteristics. So I just want to thank you. For coming again, and Kim, always a pleasure now to have you on the set.
An honor to be here.
This is just such a dramatic subject. I just really had never even thought about it until she was coming on the show, and then I started doing some research on the topic, and I was like, Oh my, we don't talk about this at all.
And you know what I'm curious about is there like someone that comes from a narcissistic parent, right? So the young adult, do they follow the pattern of marrying a narcissist? Is there kind of a pattern there? Because that's what they know.
Well, we all kind of unconsciously marry what we're used to,
right.
But I don't think anybody knows what they're doing. I don't think usually a narcissist is going to be kind and loving. It just doesn't have kindness and love behind it because they have to draw you in. So it's no way you're going to know that you're in until it's too late. So there's no way to go, well, should I marry this narcissist or not? That's not gonna come out.
Right.
Until.
But I wonder, I'm curious, like if there's, because I know in domestic violence specifically, there's characteristics you're drawn to, like the control, if you grew up in a home of control. So are there certain characteristics here that they're not even knowingly drawn to? It's almost like you're resisting.
That's the point I'm making. They're so cunning and manipulative.
Yes,
you're gonna think you have the love of your life. It is no way. And they are more manipulative.
There are no symptoms. I mean, there are no warning signs because we talked about abuse on this show before, and there are clear signs.
Yes.
And I've told a lot of women, you saw them, you just ignored them.
Right.
I mean, because there were some signs of controlling behavior and.
If you take your time and stay long enough, maybe, but most people don't stay. And then to live with somebody is different. But in particular, of the personality disorders in cluster B, they are the most cunning. They are the most. It's like Ted Bundy.
Wow.
You didn't see him coming.
Wow.
He took psychology classes and he went to law school. He knew exactly what he was doing so that no one would know. It's that level of manipulation that the narcissist has.
Well, this has been very informative today, and I thank you for tuning in to another show about narcissism with the famous, I'm going to call her famous now, Dr. Carol Provo, and my new co-host, Kim Yeater. Yes. I said it, Yeater. You did? Yes! But anyway, thank you so much, and we're going to be back next week, and we're going to have part 3, where we're actually going to delve a little deeper into where can you get help, but how to find the right therapist.
Yes.
So stay tuned. We'll be back next week. And thank you for joining us. Yay! This is Dr. Barbara Young signing off. Have a blessed week. Have a blessed week. And thank you, audience, for being here today. We appreciate you. And if you have questions of Carol afterwards, you're certainly invited to come up and ask her questions. And thank you so much. And bye-bye. Have a great week. Love you all. Love you all.
Bye.
Bye.